Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Make sure you like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please rate this podcast 5 stars where applicable and leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. What are we, episode 54, 55? Something like that.
55.
55. Or, as we were trying to pull the seasons, season 2, episode 2, something or another like that. I don't know. It's just how it is. Yeah. Well, we have a special guest with us tonight. We'll get through our weekly thing, and then I'll introduce him. Josh, how was your week?
My week was not too bad. You know, another day at the post office. That's about all I can say right now, because they all blend together anymore.
Ain't that the truth? James.
Well, it was, normal week after New Year's. Tuesday was heavy. Wednesday through Friday wasn't too bad. I did get a box holder, the monthly shopper that we usually get, and had to deliver that on Wednesday. And, or no, I delivered it on Tuesday because we got it for Saturday. That's right. I forgot about that. So I had to deliver it Tuesday with the mail because it came in on Friday. So Friday afternoon. So I delivered it Tuesday with the mail, and then Wednesday through Friday was really good. Ended up, I have a point I have to talk about that I got back Friday afternoon when I got back from the office about Rex. So we'll talk about that later. I did want to make a couple of announcements before we keep moving on here. I wanted to update that there is, for the holiday hours, a step 4 grievance that was settled with the union and management back in 05. And it says specifically, the parties reaffirm that when the primary leave replacement is unavailable on the carrier's designated holiday and other leave replacements are unavailable in accordance with Article 30.2D, the regular carrier may be scheduled to work on the designated holiday. Management is not required to schedule a regular rural carrier to work a relief day before scheduling another regular carrier to work on his or her designated holiday in accordance with Article 11.2.b. So there is a step 4 that codifies the holiday scheduling issues that we were talking about in last week's episode. So that's one of the updates that I really wanted to get out there to everybody and make sure that it was known. And other than that, the weekend was good for me, nice and quiet as usual. So I can't argue too much with that. Just working on my Director of Steward Operations information and answering questions, because we have now put out a Google form where you can ask us questions. So if you are on the Facebook page or the group or on our Discord server, there is a form that you can fill out to ask us questions about our campaign. So feel free to use that. We may bring them up on air. So, but those are my updates. How was your week, Kristen?
My week wasn't too bad. Pretty straightforward week for the most part. Back to average levels for packages, between 120 to 150 this week. Nothing abnormal there. Mail was pretty much, DPS been a little heavy, but it's the first part of the month, so that's normal. Other than that, It hasn't been too bad of a week for me. I mean, I have the impending Shadow Day Tuesday for the new RCA, and the weather's supposed to take a turn on Tuesday, so this should be fun. And I did finally, yesterday, after I got back from the route, I did finally get the puzzle weights and a couple sandbags and a shovel and my LLV for the winter. So I do believe I have to do that for the ox truck, which has the jump seat in it, before I take it out Tuesday. So that may be something I tackle tomorrow. But other than that, it's been a pretty normal week. Nothing too exciting, honestly. Nothing here. So Bill is not with us this week. He has family obligations, but we did want to bring on a special guest, and I'd like to introduce Nick. So Nick, it is now your turn.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, glad to be part of the show and come on here. And my week's pretty much been like everyone else's week. It was a little back to normal. Of course, it was heavy the day after holiday. We got slammed with a lot of GPS. Packages have finally leveled out and a little back to normal. And now we just can hopefully get everything scheduled and covered and maybe get a day off sometime here in the future.
Still wondering what a day off is outside of a holiday.
And yeah, same here. Except for Sundays and a holiday, haven't had one on since July.
Yeah, I
How's
hear
that
ya.
feeling?
I'm looking forward to potentially having an RCA, and then I'd be like, "What's a weekend off? Oh, this is what it's like." Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick, so we can get everybody acquainted with you?
Absolutely. I have been a rural carrier for 19 years this month, and 4 of those years were as a PTF, 4.5 years as a RCA, and then 3.5 years as a PTF, and went regular, and then got a route that I didn't care much for. Then I've been on the same route now for 10 years. I've been in the same office now for 12 years. Had many problems over the years with management being an issue. Currently, we have it good right now. The office I'm at, we have some knowledgeable management and supervisors that don't advertently try to subdue the contract, as I would say. And yeah, I'm here. I was you guys motivated me as well as my ADR to reach out and do a little bit more what I can to help our craft.
That is awesome. And if anybody is interested about a little bit more of Nick's backstory and what he has gone through, if if you listen to Ron Speakman's Fed Up, episode 22 does have Nick on there, and he kind of talks about his background and the things he has gone through. So it was really cool when he reached out to us, said, "Hey guys," so we welcome him on, and this should be a fun night.
Absolutely.
Nick.
Thank you for having me.
So Nick, why don't you
Yes,
tell
sir.
the people your time with the union? What happened when you prior to this and how you got back into the union?
Previously, long story, I was being disciplined and attempted to be removed by the post office as an RCA. I was a thorn in their side because I actually knew the contract. I knew that continuously violated the 12-hour rule, among other things. I called them out on their BS. They were attempting to remove me on some fraudulent charges, and my union fell silent. So I had to pick up the torch. I couldn't get my union steward to answer my phone calls. I couldn't get an ADR to answer my phone calls. I couldn't get the state president to answer my phone calls. So I had to do it myself. I basically had to advocate for myself, fight to get my own job back. Of course, like everyone else, I have a family. I have a home to take care of. I got bills to pay. And I lost faith in the union right then and there when the I couldn't get an answer from anyone. Couldn't even get someone to answer the phone calls. I'm sitting at home wondering when I could come back to work. And I got out of the union. I dropped out of the union. Fast forward, I went regular. I got into a pretty decent office as a regular. I got complacent. I was still not in the union. And my local ADR, he motivated me. He actually started showing that someone actually in the union cares. So he motivated me to get back into the union. He didn't actually ask me at all. I sent out a message to him. I said, "Sir, I am more than motivated by what you do and what you say and the way you care, that I gladly will pay my union dues as long as you keep doing what you're doing and the people in front of you or behind you keep doing the same thing."
You know what?
And
We want to applaud that ADR that you have there, because it's unfortunate that not all of our national steward system representatives are like that, unfortunately. But those diamonds in the rough definitely do make a difference for everybody.
Yes, they do.
yeah, they're the godsend that most rural carriers may never actually meet too. They're working behind the scenes getting this stuff taken care of too, working their behinds off to try and better the craft for everybody. So we want to give a shout out to every single ADR that does what they can to protect this craft. Every DR that does it, every local, every area, everybody in the system that does everything possible in the world to protect this craft. That's what we're here for. Now, the reason I say that is I actually have insider information from management, and I have a comment that one of the managers made on a Facebook group that talks about Corey Walton's office in Tennessee. It says they have very educated union personnel. The last 2 union presidents came out of my office, and the shop steward handled the arbitration for the eastern area for the union. I hardly ever got him to carry his route because he was always doing arbitrations. And that's something right there that management recognizes a well-educated office, well-educated carriers. Now, granted, they're talking about city carriers, but who's to say that can't be true for rural carriers too?
Absolutely.
That's what we're all here for.
Absolutely. I can imagine a lot of offices would be a lot different if every single carrier educates themselves in one nature or another, or educates each other. I mean, I try to educate my rural side in my office all the time. What they want to do with that information, that's up to them. But it's being educated definitely makes a difference when it comes to handling what management tries to pull.
Yeah. Speaking of what management tried to pull, wow, these just walk right into one another right after each other. The Friday thing that I was talking about, we got back our second mini mail survey results in my office. And unfortunately, mine came back no action. I had filed on my thing for the coverage factor because my coverage factor was 86% on my route. I only have 4.5 minutes to the next hour, go from 41 to 42. So I filed on that, and my supervisor printed off the NDI report. Now, for those of you who don't know what the NDI report is, it's actually how many boxes you stopped at that day. That is what the NDI report shows. my NDI report for the year averaged 6.82% of my boxes were not serviced for the whole year. So that means I serviced 93.18% of my boxes, which is higher than the percentage they gave me. I got my report back and it says route coverage is not based solely on stopping at boxes. It is based on breadcrumb data and record of mail volume for the delivery day. I'm sorry, did I not just send you the breadcrumb report of which this is based on? So you're telling me that the NDI breadcrumb report isn't part of my coverage factor? So the breadcrumbs technically aren't part of my coverage factor? Is that what you're telling me? Seriously? This is the transparency that we're talking about here. What we're lacking is all the information of what goes into these calculations. And here I have a no action that probably could have gotten me into the next hour. And yes, I did send an email to my district rep to find out what's going on. I am still waiting to hear back. Reminder, this was Friday. She may not have gotten to the email Friday during business hours and doesn't check them until the next working business day. I don't know. But hopefully I get a response soon, because I'd like to know what the heck is going on, because obviously I don't know exactly what's going on if I don't have the actual calculations. But this is the stuff we were talking about with Rex and the transparency.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if one report saying you got this and this other says this, and well, where are we getting fully all the information? Because we all know the radar report is not accurate on a daily basis. So yeah, I don't know. Until we can get that transparency someday.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so much that you can unpack with a lot of things, and a lot of different ways to calculate numbers and things like that. But the other side of it is I've been talking with my supervisor. He's actually been looking into this stuff too himself. You know, he's a former rural carrier, so he's quite interested in these things. And he looks at our package numbers, and we're usually 20 or 30 packages lower than what we actually delivered on their reports. And the two different reports they have two different numbers for package volumes.
Yes, I have seen that when we had our supervisor pull that up before. It was way off from what I had, but yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no answers on that one.
Yeah.
They just keep us in the dark. And that's what
I
they
know.
want.
Yeah. I'm hoping that at the next convention that I go to, or conference that I go to, that they have one of those management people there and they present city carrier data. And then I could turn around and say, well, since we've had Rex for so long, how come you can't show us rural carrier data, since Rex obviously can calculate from rural carrier data? Why can't you show us rural carrier data? So that don't need to go down a
You're lucky
rabbit
if you
hole.
get a radar report.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't go down a
Many of them don't get radar reports around our city at all. I had to basically kick and scream to get a radar report posted because we hadn't had one since October the 3rd, I believe. And we finally got one posted to show the last week of December.
Yeah, I say
They're
radar report
supposed
and I get
to.
weird looks at me by management, so yeah.
They're supposed to post it daily. That being
Correct.
said, I haven't seen one since the close of the survey. And I did hear that it was locked out for a period of time. I don't know from when to when. but so I need to start inquiring about that. But as of this Friday, or I should say, as of this Saturday coming up, they're doing the supervisor shuffle, making all of our supervisors in the city go back to their Form 50s. So I'll have 2 or 3 new supervisors in the building. So
December
hopefully I can get one of
12th,
them.
December 12th, it started showing coverage percentages for regular boxes and CBUs. That's interesting. I'm going to have to ask for that this week. I may get I won't have time to do that, but well, you need to do that. I'm asking.
Well, if you take 5 minutes out of your time of scrolling on Facebook, maybe you could actually put it up.
Yeah, I was going to say it only takes a minute or two to pull it up and print it.
Maybe you can do it when you're on your POOMS conference call and print it up while you're on that conference call and bored out of your mind as they're picking on city carriers.
I remember one day my postmaster had the conference call on her cell phone and she's walking around the office, just wandering around. I don't know exactly what she was doing, but she was just wandering around the office and you could, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Good to know. I will have to definitely ask for an updated one, especially if it does say you're getting 100% when you enter in your full coverage days. That is good information to know.
Yeah, I'll have to inquire about that also.
Yes, on our most updated ones, they seem to still be lagging behind a couple days when it comes to your flat volume, whether it be bundled or from the CSM. So it still seems to be lagging back a couple days. That's why in our office they posted 1 week back so we could see the updated numbers, but some were still zeroed out for the 2 previous days.
Yeah, it seems to have an average. I'm thinking of about 2 to 3 days on them. So we'll see what goes. I'll definitely have to ask for that report. I mean, my flats lately have been fairly light, so not going to complain too much at this point.
Well, part of the problem with the bundled flats is it's the shipper gives that number to the post office and then they have to upload it in. So it could be, I've heard 2 to 14 days behind showing up on the radar. And like I said in the past, you kind of have to treat it like you're balancing your checkbook. You got to count how many flats you had today and write it, bundled flats you had today, write that down. And then as you're going, you get to 2-3 days out, you start crossing off your list of numbers. And at some point it should start balancing itself out.
Yeah, I've also noticed I have informed delivery, which is different from informed visibility that they use, but informed delivery, and I've noticed that some of my flats are actually starting to show up in informed delivery on the day they're being delivered, which is really weird.
Yeah, I've had that too a few times. I noticed having the flats show up on there too. I have informed delivery as well, so. But yeah, I don't know. I guess, that's just one thing for everybody to go back and if your office hasn't been keeping up on pulling the radar reports daily like they're supposed to be doing, to definitely go and ask for that report again. Would not hurt one bit. And if they have actually updated it, I am really curious to see what mine looks like.
It's pretty easy. Tell your supervisor that Netflix has a pause button, and then they can log into the computer.
That's a good one.
Oh, I like that one, yes.
But if they're listening to the United We Scan podcast, let them finish it before they do it.
Oh no, they can pause it and come back.
No, I want them to listen all the way through first. Then they can go back and re-listen to it again.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, no,
Hashtag
I don't think.
shameless plug.
Right, right. I don't think any of my management listens, honestly. I mean, my postmaster, you're lucky if she's there a full day during the week. So I think we were up to a day. No, wait, she didn't even stay the full day Thursday. She waited till our 204B came back off his city route and threw him on the desk so she could go home early. But yeah.
Must be nice.
We don't get me started on that one. All right, silence, guys. What else we got to talk about today? Tonight, fun stuff.
Well, we talked about the candidate questions that people can present to us, as
Yep.
well as there is a possibility if you'd like to join us on stage, you're welcome to fill out that form as well. That's available on the platforms that precedingly stated. Geez, can't speak tonight. Like our
And I
Discord, our page on Facebook, as well as our group. So if you guys are interested in telling your story to us, we're willing to listen and possibly put you on air for it. Just like Nick here.
and I promise I'll make it as painful as possible.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody can make it more painful than what management does.
The bane of our existence.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
We did title this episode Answering the Call. And the reason why we titled it that is because, number one, Nick was telling his story of how he got back into the union. That's the other side of this. We want you guys to be involved in this union. If you're a non-dues paying member, and a lot of people give me flack for saying that, but if you're a non-dues paying member and you want to help with the fight, you want to help build this union up, you want to help make change in this union, you got to step up. It's going to be a sacrifice. You're going to sacrifice pay to step up to help the union. But it can be worth it. To make that change, we need as many dues-paying members as possible. Because
Absolutely.
the dues-paying members are the voice of the union. Each person that's dues-paying is the voice. Just like all of us here on this stage are the voice for this craft on this podcast. We have non-speaking contributors that help with this podcast, as well as listeners in the audience that help with this podcast. And every single one of you listening to us out there helps us make this a better podcast for the craft. We need your help, whether it's helping on the podcast or helping in the craft itself. So if you can step up, if you can spare the dues to the union, I understand right now you'll be supporting the leadership that's in the union, but that's okay because you're going to help to build a better craft. Because you'll be able to vote on the contracts, vote for delegates, be a delegate, and as a delegate, you vote on the resolutions that affect the craft, both binding and non-binding resolutions, and vote on the leadership, both at your state and national level. How much is that worth to you to be able to make that change for this craft?
Now, we're talking about that. I wanted to bring up. So I was reading our Constitution earlier today, and for delegates, where did I read it? Or even for voting for delegates. Bear with me here, people. A member must be on the rolls at least 50 days prior to the opening of state convention in order to be eligible to vote for national delegates. That's what I wanted to put out there. So if you want to join because you want to vote for delegates for national convention, you have to be on the dues paying rolls at least 50 days prior to the opening of state convention in order to be eligible to vote for national delegates. Okay.
Which is when the ballots get mailed out.
Yes. I'm bringing that up. I know because a few of us have announced that we are running for office. I wanted to bring up what the Constitution says in order to run for office.
You have to be a dues paying member in good standing
For 3
And-
years.
and not served in a higher level function
For at least a year.
for at least a year. And to be a delegate, you just have to be a dues paying member in good standing that has not served in a higher level function in the last year.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you've served as a driver training instructor or a 204B or other levels of management that affect carrier pay, especially that affect carrier pay or their job status, you cannot serve as a delegate or as a leader. The other part of answering the call is the union and the craft desperately need local stewards. You heard my report on the management who calls out the union in Tennessee where Corey Walton is. Imagine if that was your office, where management was upset because they couldn't get away with what their POOM wanted them to do, couldn't get away with what regional management wanted them to do, or national management wanted them to do. Imagine how much easier the workday would be if management backed off of carriers. And that starts with the local steward. If you
This-
have the feeling to protect your carriers in your office, step up. Answer the call to help your fellow carriers.
I'm going to agree. We just comment here that says, let's get more RCAs at national. I completely agree. I went to 4 national conventions as an RCA. And there was always just a handful of us. And I'm going to point this out because as a dues paying member, as a retiree, you are allowed to be voted in as a delegate. I specifically remember a few national conventions to where, they'll recognize everybody. They'll recognize the regular carriers, have everybody stand up, the leave replacements, have everybody stand up, and the retirees. And I specifically remember, I might have been Orlando or even Grapevine, that 2/3 of the floor stood up as retirees. It's
A lot of that is because they have the time available to do it. RCAs especially have a hard time getting the time off to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Kristen, she was an RCA in her office. She was the only one and was not able to go to a union function, even though we have the article in the contract to do that. She wasn't able to go because she was the only person to cover routes in her office. And it's the same for individuals on table 2 who can barely afford to stay afloat every paycheck because they're paid so much less, almost 10 grand less than Table 1 on the same level, and are living paycheck to paycheck in this world. It's a major expense that you have to pay and then get reimbursed for if you're able to be reimbursed. And if you're not, like Kristen took out a loan to be able to go to national convention, and she wasn't even a delegate. But
Yeah.
sometimes there are sacrifices that need to be made to answer the call for your brothers and sisters of the craft.
Yep. Out of the 4 national conventions I've been to, excuse me, I was a delegate for one of them. And actually, I got bumped up to a delegate just days before I was to leave for national convention. That was Grapevine 2019. But, I've made it work one way or another. And it is possible. And even as an RCA, you are protected under Article 24 if you want to be
34.
involved.
I think it's
24.
34.
24.
Is it 24?
It is
I
Article
get those two
24.
confused. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I know that one well.
So many articles, so little time.
Right.
I make
But,
copies of it and submit it with my leave slip.
I'm no longer an RCA. I am a month and a half into being a regular now. But I will tell you, as an RCA, it is possible. As an RCA, I have held local office twice. My former county, before I transferred, I was I was treasurer. We had a split secretary, treasurer. We had individual positions for each one. I was treasurer for 4 years. And then I am currently VP of my local. I was voted in at my last annual meeting last spring. I was an RCA. I have been a state convention delegate for every year that I have gone, starting in my first one was 2016. I have gone to every booster except for 2 since 2015. Right now, I got hired in December of 2014 as an RCA. I went to my first booster in October of 2015. I've only missed 2 boosters since. And one was my most recent fall booster because there was absolutely no coverage for me to be able to go. And yeah, it really bummed me out that I couldn't go because I was really looking forward to going. I am not going to let them deny me going for spring. I did not let them deny me going to National Convention the 4 years that I've gone. I don't do it. I mean, I flat out print out Article 24 when I turn in my slip for my 3971 for anything that is union-based. I include that Article 24 right with it. I mean, that's what you can do, I ran for national office as an RCA. If anybody remembers from 2022, Orlando, Florida, I ran for national office as an RCA. I ran for state board this past year, 2023, as an RCA. It is very possible to do any of that as a leave replacement. You have all the same options for any of the union functions as regulars do. And if you are an RCA or a PTF that wants to get involved, then definitely do it. Don't let being a leave replacement stop you. That's all I can say. I mean, seriously, it's definitely worth it.
I can tell you, I've done research, and I know that there's a leadership position that the person has only served their route as an RCA by all investigations that I've done. They move their way up through the union with only serving as an RCA. They made their regular when the bid came around, because as a leadership member, you still have bidding rights in your area, just like any other regular carrier, because as soon as you're done with your leadership position, you have to go back to your route unless you do like everybody at the top is done and serve until you retire. But
I want
they
to
have,
put this out there because I mean that's what you see a lot over the years when it comes to national board is once they get on there, they serve until they retire. And they keep going, and that's their way to retirement. As somebody who has announced that they are going to run for national board again, I would not sit up there until I retire. When I retire, I want to retire from my route. I want to get on the board to pave the way for the future of the craft and to get stuff going for the future of the craft. As somebody who has 20 more years to go before I can retire,
unless they
I
had the
want to
buyback.
I'm not holding my breath on that anytime soon. I want to make sure that there's a future for the craft for those next 20 years. Not by sitting on the board for 20 years, but if elected 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years tops. I'm not looking to make it my retirement fund. To me, it's not about the money. To me, it is about serving the craft, serving the membership, serving my rural carrier brothers and sisters, and making sure that the future of the craft is going to be safe.
Yeah, and the only way we can secure this craft is if people answer the call at all levels.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much going on right now. You know, we keep talking about Corey Walton from 8 Arbitration, but he just did an episode last week where he read 2 news articles that were city carrier related from the 70s. And the comments that management and the union were making are nearly word for word identical to what they're saying now. The fact that the post office is in the red, needs this, needs that, so on and so forth, and that the union needs to back off of management because management and the Postal Service are in dire straits because of funding issues and so on and so forth, is the same spot we've been in. And that was 50 years ago. You can negotiate for 100 plus years, but until you understand exactly who you're negotiating against and what they're negotiating for and why they're negotiating for it, you'll never get anywhere in your negotiations.
Absolutely
and that's why you need to answer the call. Everybody here does.
You know, I had a
The
question.
post office will always have 6 excuses.
Oh yeah, I mean they want to blame financial reasons for everything, and it's ridiculous. You know, I've said this many times. This, working for USPS used to be an extremely coveted position. People were lined up to take postal exams. There was wait lists for years to get in the office. And now we can't get enough people to give us even a single day off. Just once. We're not to even have a relief day once a month. We're lucky if we can find the coverage. I mean, like I said, my only saving grace has been over the last couple of years is that my office didn't have Amazon on Sundays. You know, literally, I'm still working 6 days a week. I'm a K route. I'm hoping the sub I get works out, but what's to stop them from pulling him on one of my K days to cover somebody else one day? And tell me, oh, you're going to have to work. Oh, okay, thanks. Because I'm the low man on the totem pole, so guess who gets forced in? Me.
Yep.
Meanwhile, we have RCAs working 7 days a week, several weeks in a row, and they wonder why our turnaround and our burnout is so high, and why our retention rate is so low.
That's exactly what it is right there. I mean, when you're working, you know, upwards of 12 hours a day and sometimes more, depending on your management, if they're not following that 12-hour. And that 12-hour rule is a Federal Labor Standards Act for RCAs, for leave replacements. Regular carriers, after working 12 straight hours, go into OT. RCAs, leave replacements, do not. That is a Fair Labor Standards Act that they are violating if they are requiring an RCA or a PTF, a leave replacement in general, to work more than 12 hours in a single workday. And then you got, the offices that have Amazon on Sundays. I mean, even though my office is an Amazon isn't a Sunday office, my old office was. I remember that. I was there when it came in and started. I worked all out of Sundays. Not this past Christmas because I was a regular, but the last year Christmas we had Amazon drop off on Sundays. I worked every Sunday from the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I worked 27 days straight. My next actual day off was not until Christmas Day. I honestly can say it's a year later, I'm still recovering from it. I'm still working 6 days a week. Well, thankfully, the last 2 weeks we've had a holiday. I was like, oh, this is what 2 days off in a row feels like. I don't know what to do with myself.
Not to mention, as being an RCA, working 7 days a week, excess amount of days or weeks in a row, there's lack of benefits. None of that RCA time counts toward being anything, toward your retirement. You could be in your 40s and you could be a RCA for 4, 8, 10 years, and none of that counts toward any of your retirement. You literally get nothing for it. And you're expected to bark like a dog and do exactly what they say 7 days a week, no questions asked, no time off, no doctor's appointments, no family visits, nothing. You better be there operating, doing your job with a functioning vehicle, and in some places, you better have a backup vehicle. If not, or you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Even though a backup vehicle is not required.
That is true. There's no language requiring that says you required a second vehicle. It just says you're supposed to have a vehicle ready for the route. A vehicle ready for the route.
Yep.
Management wants to construe that any which way they can. I mean, it's already been stated. We have one POV route in my office. I used to be the sub for that before I went full time. I can probably count on one hand how many times in the past year, my last year as an RCA, that I actually worked that carrier's K-Day for that carrier. Because I was pulled for every other route in the office. And being the only sub at the times, I was running my aux route on top of a full route. Even if the evaluation was more than 12 hours. When our one big route was 47, 48K, I mean, that bimmed right at that 12, just over 12-hour mark. But, usually I'll got it done in less than 10 hours. But, the point is, we do what we have to do, especially if we're dedicated. But at the same time, we need to stop letting management get away with pushing us to do what goes against contract, MP 603, and any other employee labor manual. I mean, we really have to start pushing back. And I get a lot of offices and a lot of people are like, well, if I do that, then I'm going to put a target on my back and they're going to retaliate. Well, then you file after that retaliation as well. That's the only way to stop that, is to have a paper trail. If there's no paper trail, then nobody thinks there's anything wrong in that office. I can't tell you how many times I have said that to the carriers in my office. Well, we need to do something. So then you have to file that paper trail.
As a wise man once said, file, file, file.
Yeah, exactly. And file some more.
That's right.
Shout out to Bill there.
Yeah. And of course, speaking of POVs, if you are on a government vehicle assigned route, they cannot make you get a vehicle to deliver your route. They have to pay you O-time for you sitting there waiting for a vehicle. That is vehicle breakdown time. Some want to pay wait time, which is 8127 time. So, but O-time after 8 hours, you get a paid day off. And it does not disappear. So if you bank 2 hours this year, another hour next year, and eventually get to 8 hours down the line, it adds up. Don't let management tell you otherwise on that either. But if you are on a government assigned route, you don't have to use your own vehicle. If you want to, you can volunteer to, and they have to pay you EMA for the day, but you don't have to.
That's for regular carriers only. They can force an RCA to use a POV on a government vehicle route.
Yes.
Yes. That's why RCAs are supposed to have a vehicle available to use.
As well as for partial assistance at Christmas time or any other time, or overburdened route assistance if they actually stick to the contract and do overburdened route assistance.
Now, I did stop as an RCA. I had my postmaster contact me one morning, and it's not because we had an LLV down. She wanted to pull the LLV off the route to give it to somebody else to use for partial assistance runs. And I said, absolutely not. You know, that to me, you know, if it's one thing if the vehicle's in a shop, you're down a vehicle, there's not a loaner available, and I was an RCA and she asked me, okay, that's one thing. But if I'm scheduled on a route that day that has a government vehicle, and you're coming to me saying, hey, can you use your POV on this route today so-and-so can use it for parcel runs? Yeah, no. Not going to happen. And I told her that too. And she's like, oh, well, that's sad. Oh, well, that is what it is. That vehicle's up and running. If you want to use that vehicle for parcel runs after I'm done with the route, go right ahead. But until that route's ran, no.
And on that, if a vehicle is on a route, it is assigned to that route.
Yes.
So now, granted, in my office, we have one Metris. And sometimes we have a sub who is not trained on the Metris. So they will trade with an LLV route. So that way, with somebody who is trained on the Metris, so that both routes can get run. But you cannot be forced, you cannot have your vehicle taken from you from your route in order to run something else. And if they use it for parcel assistance or to run another route in the contract, and it is required that that vehicle is fueled. Anytime it is used for anything other than the route, it is required to be returned with a full tank of fuel.
And that includes Amazon Sundays. You use LLV on an Amazon Sunday, you better be filling that up before you park it back at the office. Because, yeah, I remember that in my old office. But no, in my situation when it comes to vehicles assigned to routes, we don't have maintenance or any. My local VMF is over 2 hours away. So we have our aux route has an LLV assigned to it because it is such a small route. It has the jump seat installed into that truck. We don't have anybody that can remove the jump seat and put it in another truck, blah, blah, blah. So for my Shadow Day Tuesday, I am using the aux truck, and the aux carrier will be using my truck to run the aux route. Let's hopefully pray he doesn't break it. But, you know, in that instance, we're just trading trucks. So each route still has a government-issued vehicle. And when I return that ox route truck on Tuesday, it will have a full tank of gas.
And I have actually filed a grievance on that in my office when Amazon Sunday Hub was in my office, and we had multiple offices at our office. And carriers from another office had the rule of if it's over 3/4 of a tank, you don't have to fill it. I filed a grievance on it. My truck was never without a full tank after an Amazon Sunday after that, because I told management I will not tolerate it. And that's basically what a grievance is. You're telling them you're not going to tolerate them violating the rules.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's, and I expect the ox route carrier to, make sure my truck is filled up when he gets done with it on Tuesday. And let's just hope he's not going 15 miles out of his way to go to the ox route again either. But we're not going to talk about that. uh, but no, yeah, with that, there was something else that was mentioned, and I can touch on this as having been a POV carrier for several years. For actually the majority of my RCA time, I was a POV carrier, and that has to do with the torts claim, the torts, and the and what type of insurance you need to have on your vehicle. Now, I know a lot of places, when you contact them for insurance and tell them what they're going to do, they're going to say you need a commercial policy. You absolutely do not need a commercial policy. The the Federal Torts Claim Act, you would just tell me it's a rider. I don't have the number on me. I wasn't prepared to talk about that tonight, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit. What the Torts Claim Act covers is in the event that you are in an accident or you damage property, the torts claim is in the post office covers the damage that was done to that property or the other person. Your personal car insurance is going to cover your vehicle only. And the tort claim does not cover your vehicle or you. It covers the damage that was done while you were in the work capacity.
Now, I'm not 100%, but 521 seems to be jumping out of my head for the number.
That could be. Once I get it updated, we'll go into further detail on that. But I was just kind of wanted to touch that on just a little bit since we were talking about vehicles and POVs and whatnot. I mean, for the most part, depending on my vehicle, I just, when I had my newer vehicle that I didn't want to use on the route, but I did, but I already had full coverage on it. But mainly in the general, I just had liability insurance. I had the bare minimum that I had to have in the state because I drove junk cars. I drove a 93 Cutlass Sierra for almost 5 years. It was the best one I had. I had an 03 Buick LeSabre. I've had a 99 Blazer, an 02 Ford Explorer Sport 2-door. I've driven several different vehicles, and for the most part, I just had liability insurance on it.
And most accidents that postal carriers are involved in, and I said most, are usually not the carrier's fault. It's usually somebody else on the road, distracted driving or not paying attention or something like that. But there are instances where you are, unfortunately. We've all probably thought about it or been involved in one or something like that at some point in our life. Whether it was your fault or not, it's a possibility, and it's becoming more and more frequent as we see in the news. So brush yourself up on that stuff. Make sure you know what's going on.
All right. I'll say someone had inquired about in the comments about any updates on cutting routes. I haven't heard anything specific, but other than probably after the next survey, I know there is currently a team of 8 to 12 people on the team that are capable of doing the route cut adjustments. They have been working the last few months in offices trying to get it worked out. I know they were going to work on an office coming up in the next week or two. They were going to go into an office to try it. They have to get it everything start to finish done in a 2-week period, 1 pay period. The line of travel has to be completely rewritten from scratch, start to finish for each route. So those are some of the hangups. There are also certain offices, like I know offices with seasonal routes, there's issues with those, getting them done in those offices. So it's a hit or miss at this point on what they can and can't do. And the caveat to that is once they do everything, it won't be until 52 weeks of data has been collected after the adjustment that they know actually where you ended up. So
There is a lot of variables
that is
go into these
something.
too.
If they cut you from a 48 to what they suspect is a 43, and a year from now you end up at counting at a 41, they potentially would need, and there's nothing in writing on this, but they potentially would have to build you back up those 2 hours somehow. But
Now,
at this point, there's nothing set in stone.
now there was a new release, a revised edition of the Rex Comprehensive Guide. And I do believe somebody pointed out that it was something in there about route adjustments. Let's see if
Yeah, it'd be
I-
nice if they highlighted what they changed in the guide when they make a new change.
Right.
You know, just like how they highlight what's new in the contract when they're doing contract ratifications. You know, it would be nice if they highlighted what was changed in the Rex guides, the Q&A, and things like that. You know,
Now,
when
I
you
do
issue,
know that they did take out, we've had a few people that have kind of gone through it and kind of highlighted what they have found. They did, where it was talking about the WSS and the WSH entering into the scanner, they did take out the WSH language and only left it
course.
as WSS.
Of course, because WSH we found still isn't being counted properly, so why not just remove another count for us, another number for us?
Right.
They also changed it.
Evaluation.
They also changed it that carrier pickup is 2 pounds or over. Don't forget that part.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a few other things in there that they changed recently, but those are the big ones that affect your pay. They lower your pay, and your leadership agreed to this.
Now, the only thing it touches on route adjustments is calculating base hours on new auxiliary routes after route adjustment. And I'm going to go ahead and read through this real quick. This is number 12. It's page 20 of the updated Rex guide that came out January 4th. It says A, background adjusted routes. Local managers need a simple procedure to estimate base hours on newly created auxiliary routes after route adjustments. In the decision that follows, we'll refer to the new auxiliary route that is created as the aux route and the existing adjusted route or routes as donor routes. Carriers on both the aux and donor routes must be paid immediately after the adjustment. While Rex procedures for new routes can produce interim evaluations after 13 weeks of data collection, they do not include a procedure for setting evaluations for the first 13 weeks after adjustment. This section of the report describes the automated procedure that will be used during the initial 13-week period. B. Business logic adjusted routes. The donor route contributes time to the aux for the following 10 transfers: route miles, regular boxes, central boxes, dismounts, dismount distances, inter-unit mail, low volume, inter-unit mail, high volume, collection points, blue box in parentheses, collection compartments, and mail volume. These are the same 10 items used to adjust the base time in the interim adjustments. The postmaster enters the amount of the transfer for 8 of the 10 items, excluding route miles and mail volume, and the business logic calculates the time transferred to the aux route. For route miles, the postmaster must enter 3 pieces of information: the pre-transfer mileage and the drive time, basic route, for the donor route, and the miles transferred from the donor route to the aux route. The business logic calculates the standard time for the transferred miles from these 3 data points. For mail volume, the postmaster enters the volume factor of the donor route, and the business logic calculates the standard time for the mail volume transferred from the donor to the aux route. The process is repeated for each donor route. The total time from the 10 calculations represents the time by which the donor base hours are reduced. The total time for the new auxiliary route is equal the sum of the time transferred from each donor route plus the time for fixed activities, actual time activities, additional miles on the auxiliary route, and office walking. To determine fixed time, the postmaster must enter the withdrawal option and the vehicle time on the aux route. The business logic selects the appropriate fixed time for the combination entered. Actual times on the aux route are based on average times for load vehicle and end of shift activities. No entries are necessary. Additional miles are the stem and connecting segments that link transferred miles to the delivery unit and each other. The postmaster must estimate these miles, Google Map driving, that's in parentheses, and enter total additional miles. Finally, office walking requires the carrier and supervisor to take the actual measurements for the new auxiliary route. The business logic calculates total standard minutes for the aux route by adding transferred, fixed, actual, additional miles, and office walking minutes. The logic automatically calculates base hours for the new auxiliary route. The route adjustment process requires the postmaster to enter 12 pieces of information for each donor and 3 pieces of information for the new auxiliary route. All calculations are automated. The output shows the base hour deductions from each donor route and the base hours for the auxiliary route. And that's all that says about that.
Now, let me be the devil's advocate here. You just said 13 weeks for them to calculate it out with the REX system. That's almost 2.5 months.
Yep.
So there's a possibility that when they do these cuts, that a carrier may not be paid for 2.5 months while they figure this out. There's a possibility a carrier could be underpaid or overpaid for that. And if they're underpaid, they may or may not do a pay adjustment for that. And if they're overpaid, you know damn well that management's going to try and get that money back.
And what do you do if you get a letter of demand?
Nick?
File.
There you go.
It wouldn't be the first time for me to do that. I'll fill in for Bill tonight.
There we go. That's quite a promotion.
Yeah, that's actually happened to me before. Years ago, I unknowingly to me as an RCA on a hold down, a route was given assigned a vehicle. I was receiving EMA because it was previously an EMA route, and that actually happened to me. unknowingly to me, after I had got a couple checks and then realized that yes, EMA was on there. I pointed out the discretion. I pointed out that they were paying me EMA incorrectly. And then not long after they corrected the problem on our local level, they sent me a notice that I needed to pay that money back, and not going to happen.
Yeah, because that's
And
management error.
yeah, and we fought and we won that. That was an easy win, as
Yeah.
I like to say.
I mean, and it's not difficult for them to just go in and click that little button to say that you used a government vehicle on that or no EMA. I mean, there was plenty of times when I had my aux route and I ran my primary, which was the POV route. And if I had to run them both on that day, I used the aux truck. And I did not get paid EMA when I did that for running the primary route. They used to be one route, so it was no big deal, but yeah, that is completely 100% management at fault on that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, at that time, my station manager and supervisor were a little too busy having personal meetings in the office to log on to a computer. So yeah, maybe they were just a little bit busy with other activities.
Right. Anything else to touch on tonight, James? Josh?
Well,
Nick?
oh, you asked me and then Josh and then Nick. Well, the biggest thing we want to take away from this is, as you can tell, there are a lot of moving parts going on. There are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and then we just get a quick blast about it later on, or we get the 99-page document where they don't tell us what they've changed. They just say, here's an updated version of it. You figure it out on your own, which is how
And
we
they
pretty
didn't
much do
even
everything.
announce. They didn't even announce they put a new updated version out there. I just happened to, somebody was looking for the previous updated version, and I logged in and went, oh, there's an updated version as of today. Interesting. Yeah.
They still haven't put something out saying that they updated it, have they?
No, they have not.
No, they haven't put anything out that they've updated anything, and usually they don't. You just have to constantly be looking at the website to find out.
And if you are one of
Or
those
word of mouth.
non-dues paying craft members, you would never know unless somebody else pointed it out to you.
That is correct.
And I think that's something that I completely disagree with, is if it's something that affects your pay, your route, your evaluation, your pay, it doesn't matter if you're a dues paying member or not, you should be privy to that information.
And unfortunately, there are actually stewards out there and ADRs and DRs that will not field people's phone calls or questions when it comes to things regarding our pay. If you're a non-dues paying member, not mine, but I have heard stories and read reports of people that literally go unanswered when they have questions just because they're non-dues paying.
And when this whole Rex thing came out, like I said, I started at a test study office, so I was already kind of familiar with the scans and whatnot. Quite a few things had changed from the time I had transferred out of that office into a non-test study office and when it was finally implemented. And I remember talking about it in the office through those couple years of this thing coming, and even I was getting like the deer in the headlights stare from my postmaster, who had been a rural carrier in the past, before. And then when it finally came about, I printed out everything, every little PowerPoint presentation on the website. When the Rex, the 99-page manual came out, I printed out everything. And my boss, which, as much as I complain about her, I'll give her credit when credit is due, took those copies and ran photocopies of every single thing for every one of the routes in my office. And made sure everybody had a copy. Regardless. Like I said, I'll give her credit where credit's due. It's far and few in between, but there are instances like that. But we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for this evening. And Josh, your final commentary for this evening?
Be safe out there, everyone. It's still getting dark early. It's starting to lighten up a little bit. I know there's bad weather going across the country now, so be extra diligent out there. Since he's not here, like Bill would say, you are the most important delivery of the day. So make sure you're getting home to your loved ones. Don't get overwhelmed. If you do, take a step back, take a deep breath, and step back in. Have a good week. Talk to you next time.
Go ahead, James.
Well, the biggest thing out of all of this for any of us involved in this craft is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Knowing where you stand, what the contract is, what you have to do as a rural carrier is the most important thing you can do. An educated craft is the bane of management. And as long as you, like everybody on this podcast, continue to learn, continue to divulge yourself into the information that's available for you, you can be that bane for management in correcting the problems that are in front of you. And no matter what, even when you think there's nobody left, there's still people that help us stay all in this together.
And for our special co-host tonight, Nick.
Yes, thank you for having me, first off. And I'd like to remind everybody that's listening to this that it is the United States Postal Service, infamous on the service. We are not robots. We are not numbers. We are not a program. We are out there for the customers. If it wasn't for the customers, we wouldn't have a job. If it wasn't for the customers, we wouldn't have a paycheck. We are not there for management. We are not there to make numbers or make hours or make whatever arbitrary things they may come up with next week. Go out there, do the best job that you can every single day and service the customers. And just like the rest of you say, go home to your family and be the best human being you can be out in this tough world.
Thank you, guys. Definitely. Yes. And I know if you're in the Midwest, maybe a little bit on the East Coast, I haven't caught the New England states. I haven't caught quite where all the storm front's coming in is going to be like. But stay safe out there. Know that you do have the say on your safety out on the route. And if you feel that it is not safe for you, continue. You go back, you fill out that 1767 to cover your behind. And you just recase up everything you brought back. And we try again the next day, because that's what we do. You know, I don't want to hear of people getting into accidents and getting hurt or worse because the weather turned nasty and management was telling them they couldn't come back. That is your call. And if you make that call on safety, definitely fill out that 1767 safety form. And on that note, everybody stay safe out there. Have a good week, and we'll be back next week.
I'm not paid enough to tell you what to do.